This is a test of the City of Palatka audio-visual equipment. Mayor Terrell Hill. Commissioner Borum.
Present.
Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Campbell, can you hear us okay? Commissioner McCaskill is not present for the record.
See if we can communicate with them. There's an issue.
Mr. Manager, I can't hear you. This is Valeria.
Mr. Campbell, Commissioner Campbell, can you hear us?
Ms. Thomas, I just indicated that if we can't communicate with Commissioner
Yeah,
Campbell,
he
then
says yes.
that's an issue.
He says yes, he can hear us.
Yeah, he says yes.
You were a little muffled. You were muffled. Can you say something?
You all
Commissioner
can't hear me.
You're in and out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, theoretically, you have a quorum with 3 present,
Oh, we're good. We're fine.
but I just wanted to make sure that we had an understanding as to whether or not Commissioner Campbell was in a position to really participate. I guess that was a legal opinion, Ms. Thomas. I apologize if your opinion differs. I'll defer to you.
It was rhetorical. Nobody responded. We're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna have our invocation at this time. Everyone, please bow your heads. You can stay seated. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you right now for another opportunity to come before you to do your will. We ask that you watch over us through this budget process. Lord, that you be with us, that you guide us, that you allow our thoughts to be clear and done according to your will. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we're gonna stand for the pledge. Yeah. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone here for public comment? Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. If you're here, you can use the YouTube chat function. For the last time, we're no longer going to have the YouTube chat function as an official comment, but it'll still be available after today. You can dial 386-329-0100 extension 0 for any further comments. Today will be the last day that we use YouTube. For public comment.
Not at this time.
Seeing no one here for public comment, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move on to our agenda items, presentation and discussion of our salary study results. Come on up, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Tom Masters. I'm with the Board of
Please utilize the microphones, please.
Just got to mash the button so the blue light comes on.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Again, I'll just start from the top very quickly. My name is Tom Masters. I'm with Reward Advisory Group, and we're here for our second visit to present the results of the compensation study for the city of Palatka, specifically as it relates to changes that the commissioners, the mayor, or questions that were asked at the last budget workshop. So before I jump into the presentation, I just want to go over those couple asks, and then I'll go through the deck and provide the data. So in terms of updates, revisions, changes, we've provided the city with employee level modeling for each of the options, as well as the market salary survey results. We've revised or added to our modeling a cut that's based on only small peers. So those peers within the survey that were under 50 mil in revenue and under 20K in terms of population served. We've added an additional option 4 to the cost modeling results. And that model included moving to $15 an hour for anyone under $15 an hour, as well as addressing compression. And then we've also added a slide in terms of providing departments with the largest percentage increases or impacts as a result of the study. So without further ado, I'm going to jump to the slides if that's okay with you all, where we've made changes or updates. The first one being slide 4. So on slide 4, the addition that we made here is again running the numbers and the outcome of the salary survey based on a revenue population cut across our peers. Again, we've isolated for that model those peers under 50 million in revenue and under 20K in terms of population served. Based on that data, city pay ranges, so the minimum, midpoint, and maximum, are 93% to market. And city actual pay is 99% of market. So just a couple comments that I wanted to make here in terms of the outcome. Sample size here is a bit of a concern. If you remember the last time, we highlighted our confidence in the data because we had 32 peers, 20 of which provided data. And when we do the all cut, that gives us a very high confidence level. I'm just going to remove my glasses, they're fogging up. When we get down to the 7 peers that meet that revenue and population served criteria, that gives us right off the bat a very small number of peers to work with. So our confidence level drops there. Typically in a study of this nature, I'm looking for a minimum of 7 data points. And even then, that's considered weak. So typically I'm looking for 10 plus data points in terms of comparison. So that's just one note there with that revenue population cut model. And then also just looking at the peers themselves, when we run that cut, the only other concern that I would have from looking at the results is it does remove some of those peers that are in close geographic proximity to the city of Palatka, which are likely to be your biggest competitors in the labor market. The other piece I wanted to point out here, because last time we talked about pain points or hot spots in terms of departments or positions that were furthest behind market, I do just want to call out that in this model, the firefighter pay plan, the one that's already been negotiated in the collective bargaining agreement, was found to be competitive at that revenue population cut analysis. Meaning that when we make the recommendations and model that out, there is no change recommended for the firefighter pay schedule via that cut. Whereas in the all peers, there is a recommendation made to increase firefighter pay. Sure, we can go as we hit topics. I'll pause there for a moment.
Hello? I can't hear.
If I understood you correctly, if you limit yourself to what you're calling the population revenue cut, which is the peer group consisting of 7, then you're coming up with the conclusion that your firefighter pay plan is competitive.
That's correct.
If you go to the all peer group, that's where you're going to fall to a different conclusion.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Jones, also along those lines, when you mentioned that revenue population cut on average city pay ranges are 93% of market and actual pay is 99% of market. Explain that.
Sure. So in a pay structure, you have two components at the end of the day. You have a range, a salary range, which is a minimum to a maximum.
Mhm.
And then you have the actual pay of the employees in the role. So with a 93%, we're comparing one range for the city to the peer ranges. Nothing to do with actual pay. With a 99%, we're comparing employees' actual pay here to employees' actual pay at your peer groups.
So as I understand it, I mean, we are 99% in the range with all other competitors.
Not all of the competitors, just the 7, the peer group.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's who we, the peer group, that's what I'm talking about. These competitors,
Yep.
99% in the range. So, so we're right there with them.
Assuming you limit the peer group to just those that meet the revenue and population cut standard. Yep.
Absolutely, okay, gotcha.
No further
Continue.
questions. I'll jump then to slide 6, please. Of course, we also ran the new totals in terms of financial cost impact. For the upper table, that's the table that we presented at the last budget workshop, with the exception being we added the option 4 there. And that model is kind of a hybrid of two approaches. Number one, it's addressing the $15 minimum wage increase or bringing everyone to $15 an hour, but it also takes into consideration the factor that's looked at in option 2, which is years of experience. So it's a combination. It's bringing everybody up to at least $15 an hour and addressing compression based on tenure or time and role. And that comes to 601,766 in terms of cost impact. And that's annualized, of course, with budget burden added. In that model too, there were 17 roles that were 80% or lower to market. And 9 of those, or about half, were in public works. And then in table number 2, we've run the same numbers based on the same methodologies. So there's an option 1, 2, 3, 4 there, but that's again, just based on that revenue population cut, based on the data from those 7 key peers. In general, for options 1, 2, and 3, the cost is about 20% or thereabouts lower than the all peer model. And then option 4, I think, is about 10% lower, 536, 821. And in that model, because we're using that smaller peer set, as opposed to 17 jobs being 80% or lower to market, under that revenue population cut, there are 12 jobs that are lower than or equal to 80% market, and a little less than half of public works. There's a couple of police positions in there as well. I'll pause there for a moment. Any questions around the modeling or the outcomes? Next slide, please. And then the final ask addressed was in terms of hotspots or areas most impacted or furthest behind market. And so what we provided on this slide, this is a new slide since the last workshop, is just average increase in terms of base by department and option, just to give you an idea of kind of the severity of where we're addressing by department. See that city clerk, cultural resources, and airport are up there. Parks, facilities, streets, and rec are a close kind of second in terms of being, the highest impacted in terms of adjustments. Yes, sir.
I noticed in our peer group, we didn't even have Putnam County in here. Was there a reason why they were left out? I mean, that is a competitor of ours as well.
Yeah, I believe they're actually on the list of 32 peers, being that they're the county that Palatka sits in, but they did not respond or provide data back to us. So we get 20 out of 32 peers. That's a pretty good result, but there's always those peers who either are swamped and can't provide the information, don't have it online where we can pull it, or choose not to participate in the survey.
I think that's some important data that we should have. How do we fare to just our county? When we talking about salaries, you know, we also lose people to go to the county from the city. So that's very important. I thought we should have that included, even though you said, you know, we knocked out some of the people that's close in proximity to us. I mean, that's right in our back door. And it should be included. Just my thoughts.
Yep. Yes, sir. No, and contact attempts are made for all the peers on the list. It's just a matter of, you know, whether or not they choose to respond.
I'm just wondering if there's any way we can get their data, if they respond or not, in terms of what they paid their employees. It's public record as it relates to pulling data or making information requests. You know, I think that would have been like an important data point as well. Share the same sentiment as Commissioner Jones on that one.
Understood. So in terms of updates to the deck, that covers them all. At this point, I can answer any additional questions or happy to dive into the data if we want to go that route.
What's the pleasure of the board? Commissioner Campbell, you got anything? Get up the text, we'll see if it answers.
When I attempt to chat Commissioner Campbell, I'm being advised he's not in the meeting, although I see his picture.
I'm here.
We can hear you now.
I have nothing. Outside of what agreeing with Commissioner Jones about that information, I definitely think it's something that we should have.
Any other comments? Jones?
Hey, not at this time. Go ahead, Gary.
Commissioner Boer,
I'm good, thanks.
you want to proceed?
Yeah, we can proceed. I mean, we just noted a point in terms of information, but yeah, we can proceed.
You got a comment now?
Yes.
You already missed your turn.
Going back to the summary of these key points, option 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just want to make note to what the initial request was, so that we won't lose focus here, was to bring the sanitation workers that were pretty much at poverty level pay up. And I know some extensive work that your firm have done, and as far as staff going back and forth with working these things out. What I see up here is the significant increases to other areas just by trying to bring the lowest paid people up. And I don't know if we're going to achieve the main goal that we were trying to achieve without breaking the bank. And that's a concern, and I want to say it up front so that everybody know. And I was the one that said we have to make sure that we get those folk that needed the most some money. And I still believe in that, and that's still the goal. But looking at the numbers that you put up in every proposal, for example, I'm gonna use as an example, cultural resources, you know, the average increase, 26.3% on option 1, 10% on option 2, 5, and then option 4 increase is back at 26.3 percentage raise. And you look at it, sanitation department is just 6.5, 6.5, 4.8, and then 12.2% increase for those workers. And I must say that those department, sanitation actually have more people in that department than cultural art, cultural resources, and I guess I could include recreation in there too, which they have significant numbers as far as the increase. So again, we trying to, we don't want to be the have and the have nots, because that's what we have right now. We want to have and have a little bit more. So I wanted to put that out there for the record.
Yeah, I got one. You through, Commissioner? Yeah, that was a good point, because initially when we had some one-on-one with the city manager, the concerns was our water department, which we were losing people, as well as sanitation, which we had critical operations to the city. So those two department was why I think a lot of the things were brought forth, in addition to some of the other departments that may have been impacted. So I'm just curious about, why those did not show up as being, severely impacted as some of the other departments was. So they're being paid to the degree that other peer areas are being paid. But when you look at the salary structure of those guys, and whether it's water or sanitation, sound like those were the areas that was highly impacted. I just don't understand why the study didn't bring that out or show that.
Well, the study only brings out what the data shows, right?
That's correct.
So I think the question becomes, is the perceived disparity a disparity based upon the market and what the market is showing, or are the numbers better than we thought they would be? That's the question. So it looks like the gap that we anticipated is not the gap that the report reveals. And so it looks like what the report's done is pointing out some other areas where there's some deficits that need to be addressed. And so I guess for me, the goals were different than the goals that stated. And I think the goal for me wasn't to get anybody to anywhere. It was to get a picture of what the true story was. And I think the data is showing us something different than even what I thought the data would show as it related to where we need to be in certain departments. And part of that may be based on the fact that, we did increase the floor in the other departments a couple of years ago. And so, I mean, it's to me, numbers, they got to show this as numbers never lie. They do sometimes. But if you don't have an agenda, the numbers don't really lie. The numbers are the numbers. And so it's like we're at a point where these numbers are saying something that can be validated based upon the number of responses you got. The fewer responses you get, the greater the coefficient of error is in whenever you look at what's in place. And so with the 20 respondents, there's less of an opportunity for error than there is with 7 respondents. That's just what it is. And so when you look at the total market, it's different from what we all anticipated. But
No, I'm good. I respect the study or whatever. I'm not saying that the study was wrong. I was just going based on what the initial concern was, and I'm good with however I accept this report.
But that wasn't my comment. My comment wasn't geared towards you. My comment was just that the study's a study, and we got to determine where we are based on what we got.
Well, I like to add, Brother Mayor, that in doing this, I take it very seriously because I want to make sure that we keep employees here. And that hasn't changed to make sure we could take care of them. But I did do a little more research, and I wanted to share it with this board and this commission, as well as the public. I took the liberty to call a couple of surrounding cities. When I looked at the list, and I called Lake City, Florida, whose population is close to ours. I think it's 12,063. And for their public works, they no longer have sanitation. They outsourced that. It was cost effective for them to do that, according to them. But their public works people make $10 an hour starting. Ours are 11. And the firefighter EMT is at $10.80 an hour because of the 56-hour work week. And that's how they come up with 31,573.57 as far as the annual salary. And I kind of wondered why we didn't at least have Lake City, because they are similar size as we are. So when you start comparing, and they may haven't responded to you guys, but I did know it's public record, so I called. And sometimes we need to do those things. And so when I see that, that's why I knew we're not that far away from other areas. I mean, we have ways to go. We have room to work. But when I'm talking about the intent was an emergency, and you don't have anything to do with that, Mr. So this is just information. When we talked about dire needs of people that couldn't hardly afford to make it paycheck to paycheck, yes, that's a dire need. I consider that dire need, and we want to help those folk. So that's why we start talking about, can we give them a little more money for the work that they're doing, being that it's a critical shortage as well. The rest of our departments, this is the snapshot that we have. We see where we are, but those people are critical. And the fight is to get them a little bit more money so they can make it. And I'm talking to the entire staff, team members of the city of Palatka at this point. When we sit and talk, it looks good when we get a raise. We don't just go and throw a number out there. If you're making $20,000 a year and you get a 10% raise, so that'll give you $2,000 more a year. If you're making $80,000 a year and you get a 10% raise, that's giving you $8,000 more a year. You see the picture? So we're talking about, we can't give everybody 10% raise. It's still not going to be equal out. It's not going to be equal where it's going to be an equal amount, but it's not going to help both areas the same. That person making $80,000, that $10,000 or that $8,000 will go a lot farther than that $2,000. And what we're trying to do is get those folk at the bottom to get a percentage where they could actually have a little more cushion or buy some extra loaves of bread at the end of the week. Because as we can see, and we know, and I looked at all the salaries, we got some people that make pretty good. So I just want to make that heartfelt. So I'm saying team and family when we use that concept. So when we're trying to help our fellow employee out, our fellow brother or sister that works with us, we look down and say, well, hey, look, they do need a helping hand. We need to try to help that. Maybe we don't think about self right now, but we're not going to forget about everybody either. Because coming 2026, everybody's going to get a bump somewhere. But based on the things that we have done, we just had a vote not to raise the millage rate. So that's going to tie up some funds that we could have had or anticipating having. We need to know that we don't have that cushion right now. And we need to, as a family, I say it like this, as a family, we need to understand that everybody may not be able to get at this time what we really are hoping for. But we really need to remember the cause of this survey and search altogether, and that was to try to help those that are pretty much at poverty level right now. I just want to make that statement as we go forward.
Yeah, I think we could, also entertain in terms of when there's a particular incentive or raise given out, you say if there's no flat 10%, 15%, whatever it may be, because it does impact different ranges differently based on the amount, but if it can be weighted to a degree to where people who are at the lower pay ranges will get a little bit more to where it's equitable at that level. Like you said, I think it could be a weighted increase. That's what I would like to see.
I caution all of y'all to remember this little thing called the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause. Y'all start to make certain decisions that don't necessarily affect everybody the same way. Just make sure that you get with counsel, and as you begin to throw out the ideas and we begin to adopt ideas, I think throwing ideas out is fine, but as we get to an adoption point, make sure that the ideas that you throw out don't trigger some component of the 14th Amendment of equal protection. Because at the end of the day, we owe the same duty to everybody, regardless of what department they're in. Things are a little different when you're administrators, but outside of that, you owe the same duty to everybody. And so we need to be conscious of the decisions that we make, that they have, that we've got at least the grounds to stand on to justify why certain things are done differently. Yes, sir.
Couple of things. First of all, there's no doubt that this is a
We can't hear.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, can't hear him.
Thank you.
I've got the button.
Microphone,
pushing out.
please, officer.
Thank you.
So what I was saying is that there's no doubt that this is a complex picture. It's like a game that probably all of you are too young to play, but it used to be a game that they called pickup sticks, where you had a stack of little sticks that you hit a column and you let them go. And then the object of the game was to move the sticks off one at a time without moving any other stick. I realized that was before all the electronics that many of you
Yeah,
grew
we're
up
way
with.
too young for that.
But my point is that there's a little bit of that concept in what you're doing here, because almost anything you do has an impact on other job classifications. For instance, it was suggested that possibly you could give sanitation workers a $2 an hour raise. I think it was 2 to 3. The impact of that would be to have a starting sanitation worker at a rate above a starting firefighter. I believe it's unrealistic to think that there won't be ramifications to that sort of thing. And I know sanitation workers are critical, but so are your water plant operators, so are your wastewater treatment plant operators, so are so many others. So the point of this exercise was to try to give you a plan that would allow you to take an equitable approach to getting city salaries up to competitive range across the board. Now, this is only phase 1 of the plan. Phase 2 would be something that would be the next stage, and that is where they come back with your provisions for giving people raises within brackets, so that you have something that's logical and reasonable that you can apply not just this year but across the board. So that for one. 2, Lake City's certainly, if you accept the premise that we're competing only against those of like budget and size, then other than what Tom said about a sample size of 7 not being ideal, then you may look at our picture and say we're not that far off. But to me, it's unrealistic to think that a person who's looking for a job or wanting to keep a job cares about what your population is if you can drive 30 minutes and make $3 or $4 more an hour. Lake City doesn't have a St. Augustine within 20 minutes of it. It doesn't have or St. Augustine Beach or for that matter, a Flagler or a Fleming Island or Keystone. So they may have a bit of of an advantage in that there's not many places for people there to go to get a job in the governmental sector for them to compete with. We don't have that luxury. So my only comment is it's not for me to say, what plan you come up with. I'm just going to mention that if you only address one department or two departments in your plan, it's probably not realistic to think that there won't be ramifications in other departments. And I'll just leave it at that.
I have a question to you, city manager.
All right.
Since you handle day-to-day operations, I'm gonna volley the ball back into your court because it's actually the operations of your sanitation department, and we are unable to keep people as it is. So what's your plan? Or what was your plan prior to this? And, or should we say alongside the salary survey and the steps that we're trying to get, would you have any other options that you have explored or are willing to explore to make that happen? With all the aforementioned that you just mentioned in mind?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, because, and I think you ultimately, that's your responsibility. So if that would be the key, you're saying what we would do. My question, what plan you have so that we could achieve this, so it won't look like, well, the commission made this decision, because that's how I kind of feel as I've been even exploring this thing, because it's like, and I agree with you, because we both agreed about, we kind of missed the opportunity where we could have some revenue, but that's water on the bridge at this point. But, I want to volley it back.
Still gonna fuss about that. But keep going.
I want to volley that back because, half of our workforce is out of the city. So they're coming here for some reason and might just like the city of Palatka. Or maybe it's a lack of choices. But I'm going to give it back to you to answer my question.
All right, I'll answer your question. First of all, the reason I don't think a simplistic approach to this works, or for the reason that I don't think a simplistic approach to this works, I was interested in us having something that looked at a comprehensive approach to your fixing your wage issue, not just for this year, but hopefully for the future as well. That involved both wages, wage compensation survey, a new pay classification plan with merit increases, all of which ultimately would be a platform you could use for the future. Rather than just, I don't know of anybody that's proposed just giving everybody 10%. I don't believe that was ever a proposal that I've seen, or 5% or anything else. I think that from my perspective, if you ask me which one of the plans personally I would go with, it'd be option number 2. Because I think that is the most equitable, in my opinion, when you couple that with the next phase of what Reward Group is going to bring back, which is the merit pay criteria and the classifications that providing for raises within classification, so that an employee, once they're in a classification, has some expectation of being able to move up in that classification and get raises based upon merit. So if you ask me what my option would be, you did, my option would be number 2. So from that perspective, that's kind of where I would stand. Now, as I said a minute ago, the problem is complex. And so I'm not taking issue with anybody who has a differing opinion. I'm just saying that I think that's the most equitable option, in my opinion. I basically had said that before Mr. Masters said that in our earlier conversation. From my perspective, it would be 2 or 3, and we can't afford 3. So that was where I was from earlier.
3 is, go ahead, least percentage.
I'm sorry, we can't afford. 2 was the one that I thought we could afford best, or that would provide with the most. Let's see, where's 3? Option 2. 3, if I'm understanding it correctly, would have the 550. 2 was the 472. 4 was the 601. If I use the all peers comparison, which I believe, and you're asking for my opinion again, and I'm not Tom, so this isn't my game, but from my perspective, I still can't get past the fact that you're competing with people that aren't just in your budget or population range. So I would have, and also because of the lack of confidence in the 7 peer group, the group of 7 peers, I would have opted with option number 2, which was the years of experience option, which was, I guess that's the second highest. What's option 1 up there? Yeah, it's the second highest cost would be option 2, next to the bottom. Option 1 just to bring everybody to the minimum.
Is there
I'm looking at the
is there
wrong sheet.
anybody leaning towards option 1?
I was looking at the wrong sheet here that I was.
Just-
No, go back to that other sheet
I was
where you
looking at
just
some
put
of the
up,
key
because
points.
that's what we were looking at.
That one.
Right
That's
there.
the one that I was looking at.
And that's what,
So help me understand this being different from page 6.
That's the average increase, percent increase by option and department, but your net dollars are reflected on that
Okay.
earlier chart. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so yeah, that wasn't clear on this. That's why I looked at this. I'm like, well, wow. You just going purely on percentage.
That's only percentage, right?
Yes. Okay.
But again, it is a policy matter. So I mean, I can I can tell you what my opinion is, but like you said a minute ago, or you implied a minute ago, there are a lot of factors involved, including your budget and your policies and other things. So that's why, I mean, you're asking me what I think's better from an operational perspective. If I'm looking at this from a standpoint of putting in play what I think is an equitable pay plan, which has room for movement based upon the classifications and the merit raises, it would be option 2. So that's where I am.
But it's not a pure policy decision. And I think it's both an HR decision as well.
I
And
agree.
it has to be collaborative
I
in the
agree.
way that it's done.
and the components that I see that I think your emphasis is more on is the long term. And I get that with the steps. Be honest with you, I'm looking for the fix right now. Because of the people who was affected. And, okay, we mentioned about option and you guys mentioned about the law, and that's why we had an attorney here. So, yeah, what about the opinion of, I think it has been volleyed around about bringing the people that are at $11 an hour up to $2 an hour, you said? $2 more an hour? So the same happened with the bottom at the police department, the fire department, and every department. Is that still a violation of the law? Or no? We're talking about breaking the bottom salary up.
I'm not going to offer an opinion about violation of law because I'm not an attorney.
No, she's on the call.
Nobody told you that. And I made the suggestion. And again, I didn't say it was a violation.
There are people talking,
Conscious
but I
of what the
can't
law is.
understand what you're saying or hear.
But what I would say is from a practical perspective, remembering again, they use that term compression. And I guess that takes into account a lot of ills, but you raise the bottom up $2. Now you end up with a person who's been in a position for 8 years at a whatever engineer level at the fire department, who's now making the same as what you just gave to the sanitation worker who's signing on tomorrow. There's, in my opinion, there will be ramifications from that. I mean, I don't see how they can't be.
I said. Also give it the floor for every department.
So whatever their
So-
lowest wage is, give everybody at the lowest wage a $2 an hour raise.
Yeah.
What about people that thought?
Again, we're talking about the ones that's barely making it. So you're hitting every department, but you're not hitting everybody in the department.
You're gonna have to speak to a microphone or else.
Right.
Call
I
it
can't
out.
hear you.
He's speaking to compression, and that's exactly the definition of that.
Compression is going to be an issue for, you bring the bottom firefighter up, but now you got a firefighter who's been there for 6 years, making the same dollar. Then same thing with every other position. You got engineers who have been engineers for 10 years, and now they got a brand new engineer making the same money. So there's nothing there that separates them for their years of service, which I think is going to be an issue for us, and it's going to make it hard for us to hire. And just back to some of the earlier points, we are competing with everybody around us, whether we want to or not. That's where everybody's going. I got a guy leaving to go to Jacksonville. I got another guy trying to get on St. Johns County. So those people are going to leave, because if we got to this number here, which I think I saw somewhere was 38,000, that's right around what the county pays, St. Johns County pays. That would make us competitive.
So
It wouldn't be better, but it'd be competitive.
guess what that is? Finance right there, $2 more an hour will get you there.
It's about
Did you-
4%. Right?
Kind enough, I already
4%.
did in math myself. I'm telling you, I get what you're saying. I understand what compression is as well. But guess what? Nobody's talking about separation. Look at separation right now. You got separation, somebody getting paid way up here in the same departments, and then someone getting paid $11 an hour. Do anybody
Different
see that part about it?
responsibility levels though, right? So I mean,
I do understand, Chief, and I understand that you guys are gonna get the 2% raise as well that's coming. My thing is,
it would be one or the other.
One or the other.
okay, so if we don't give anybody else a raise, guess what? Fire department's gonna get that 2%. Am I
That's
correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So nobody balking about that, but we're balking about trying to give somebody else a little bit of money. I just want to, I feel like I'm fighting for my salary, which I'm not, but I'm fighting for equality when you guys said, but when you guys are talking about equality across the board, I just want to make a point, and I'm gonna rest this point, that there are some people not making any money. You guys know it. Those are the people that we really should be talking about right now and trying to help them out. And how we get to it. But I just wanted, it's just been kind of pricking my heart to fight for these folks in this manner. And I apologize for taking up the time when people thinking that I'm kind of being unrealistic.
Taking up all the time?
But I'm gonna tell you that I just think that when we start talking about a team, that may be something that we could say, hey, listen, even if we have the conversation to talk to the fire department union, have our attorney talk to their attorney and their representative, and just say, hey, how can we do it where we also bring up your minimum people as well, considering compression, but maybe addressing that more with this plan that we're talking about in the years to come with the step. So we're addressing it, but it might not just happen as soon as we give the lower paid employees.
I understand your concern. I would just say that in the past 3 to 5 years, that has been addressed at the fire department. The last time they went to $11 an hour, the fire department said nothing. They didn't invoke the clause. They allowed you to give them $11 an hour. And right after that was a promise that they were going to fix public safety.
No, fix public safety by getting you $1 million with the trucks, if you want to know the deal.
I'm just telling you what, I don't bargain for the union. I'm just
Well,
telling you
you
where
seem
I
to
think
be.
their mindset's kind of.
Just to understand it, there's a divide between being in administration and being a union guy.
Yeah.
Right. You got to make sure you know what your role is.
Yep.
And I know it's changed over time, but make sure you remember you're the chief. You're no longer the.
Right.
you're
I'm
no
just
longer
telling
the
you where I
union.
think their head is based on history. I haven't talked to them about bargaining for this, and nor would I, but that'll come up in October next year.
Yeah, but the promise came up and the promise came up, the promise that was there was that there was a whole bunch of complaining. I was there and I was a part of the conversation. There was a whole bunch of complaining that you didn't have proper equipment. You didn't have proper this, proper that. You got $1 million proper, and then you still got a problem. So let's not be confused about what happened, because there's a whole bunch of shiny trucks over there. That was the difference between your salaries and what was in place.
That's a fair point. However, shiny trucks don't pay their rent.
Well, that's
don't
what they
pay their-
wanted. I only just give the people what they want.
I'm just telling you, as employees, they're looking at this completely.
Well, it's hard to put a fire out when the truck cuts off.
It is, but again, that's going to be the city's concern, not the employee.
All right, chief, you can sit down.
Well, I'm looking at all the options, and irregardless of whatever we pick, option 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're still gonna miss somebody. I mean, if we're gonna talk about
Three doesn't miss
or
many.
not missing anybody, then we need to come up with another option that has everybody, because again, like Commissioner Jones was saying, when we were trying to satisfy certain things and without getting into any of the legalities or whatever, these four options don't cover everybody, and that's my point.
You got one option that covers 114 people. What's our total staff?
About 153, 160.
Ms. Jones?
What's our total number of employees, Ms. Jones?
It is 136.
Okay, thank you. So you're gonna go ahead and finish your presentation. You got anything else?
That was it in terms of the changes from the last time around.
All right, just making sure. Jones, you got anything else? I was being funny. Go ahead. Any further comments for the commission?
No, I'm good.
I want to laugh. Commissioner Campbell, you got anything?
No, sir, not at this time. You all have.
We can't
covered
hear you.
Stuff that I wanted to have covered, so I'm good.
Turn it up. Can you say that again?
Commissioner Campbell said he was good.
Okay. Commissioner Board, we got anything else?
No, I'm good. We can proceed.
All right, so here's the question. All the conversation we've had sounds like nobody's considering option one. Is that safe to say? Jones? Is there anyone considering option one or believes that we need to continue having conversations about that as we start to dwindle this thing down? Okay, so it seems like Commissioner Borum.
No, I'm not on option one.
Okay, Commissioner Campbell.
No, sir, for option one.
All right, so we can X option one. I think that's gonna help you out a little bit. What about option four? Anybody considering option four?
These are just suggestions, right? Because we haven't really decided what we, as a board.
This is what I'm trying to do right now, is get us to a point where we start to narrow the conversation down, because we haven't decided what we're gonna do. But at least if we can tailor the conversation down, then we can start to come up with a plan. But if we got four options on the table and we know that we're not gonna use it, the ones we know we're not gonna use, let's stop talking about them.
Okay, I just gave a suggestion and for consideration, I don't know, and I think Commissioner Borum also kind of agreed with it. Because the biggest question gonna be where we're gonna get the money from to fund these raises, because next gonna be about the budget. But that's gonna be the other question, and I know you don't have anything to do with that, Tom. However, that's why I said I'm bottling it back to the city manager. Where are we? No, just where are we, and can we actually do these things? And there are some other options as well that we hadn't explored. And since we don't have a meeting before we start talking about these things, and that's probably what nobody want to speak about, but privatization of or outsourcing the sanitation department. You know, the cost versus what the sanitation department bring in.
So if I could speak to the first point, Ms. Shank advises me that she ran a budget proposal plugging in option two, and that she has a balanced budget with option two that would involve, correct me if I'm wrong, by the time you include the increase in ad valorem taxes that you realized a projected increase in sales tax and fire fee, if I understood you correctly, you're about $500,000 into the reserves in funding the budgets of the departments, including option number 2. Now, I will, as a matter of point of I guess, reference or disclaimer, and we'll talk about that more on the budget side of it, but that was plugging in about $82,000, $80,000 for the Jenkins facility in total, which would not be enough to cover a fire suppression system or any major repairs, but that would be an annual operating expenditure. It did not also include anything for the water taxis other than $32,000 a year, which would basically be for maintenance and upkeep. We're trying very hard to have discussions with Mr. Lagacia about an operating contract, but we've not been successful yet in sitting down with him. And that did not also include the police radios, if you have to pay for them, if I'm correct on that, which are another $512,000. Is that correct?
No, we didn't include.
It did include.
Correct.
So
It's
you're
in a
talking about
separate.
going only into reserve by 500,000. And I say only, and I don't mean that to say only, and that 500,000 is nothing, but it still leaves you at about a 25% reserve ratio, as I understand from Ms. Shank. So is it doable? Yes. Can you do it every year off the reserves? No. You know, and you do have those things that I just mentioned to you, Jenkins and the riverboats, that are unknown. So again, that's just factual information from Ms. Shank.
Well, as we say here on this commission, we all have the goal to make the city of Palatka run efficiently and effectively by also having a good quality of life. And what I don't want to have when my tenure is over is someone come up like the chief just came up and say what the past commission promised and didn't deliver. Because we could get into that if we choose the wrong option and don't be able to sustain this. So I think when you're saying some of the things we have to consider long-term, we need to consider those things. And, you know, as much as I would like to, you know, break the bank, so to speak, and give everybody the money that they deserve, and I do feel everybody deserves more money, but can we do it? And that's the biggest question. And I think that, you know, I know we need to have a little more answers before we do that. And the biggest thing, and I'm gonna go back to it, is you mentioned about the sample size, but I think if we're doing an extensive survey, there shouldn't be no reason we shouldn't get our neighbors. There shouldn't be no reason we shouldn't have the county's numbers in here included. And I request that you go back and get it.
But if we take your logic into account, the county's got a $130 million budget and 70,000 people. I mean, it's still, it's different from what you asked for. You asked for small communities.
Alachua County has.
I mean, I'm just saying, you asked for smaller communities, so you gotta,
but they're right here, Mayor.
But you can't, you try to limit it, but then on one end, you don't. Right or wrong?
We even have Duval County in here.
But you asked,
Million
you
people.
said that you only wanted, you asked the thing to be reduced down to communities under 10,000 people
I did.
and in a certain budget range, which was similar to ours. And now you're saying you want the county got 10 times more money than we got. And almost 10 times more people, at least 7.
I can understand that, but again, that's a request.
I mean, it's a request, but just keep it consistent so I don't get confused.
All right. Again, that is my request. And if we look at even Green Cove Springs, you look at Jacksonville and you look at that population as well, as far as their revenue, how can we relate? St. Augustine Beach. It's a beaches community. The taxes, I mean, again, I made my statement. I'm gonna close.
That's fine. We compete against Waste Pro too, and they got way more money than most of these places. They're $1 billion industry. Waste Pro, waste management, Republic, all those places are hiring people who compete with sanitation workers, and they're within 30 minutes. That's where our labor's going. We got guys going to St. Augustine, to Green Cove, to Jacksonville, all over.
Okay, and I understand that. So if we can't compete, that's why I asked the question, have we entertained outsourcing it ourselves? They wouldn't have as many jobs if other municipalities are keeping their sanitation workers and must have a high demand. And so maybe that's something we could look into. I don't want anybody to lose jobs, but then again, my prior statement, I don't want in 4 years or 6 years when people that are making the decision now are gone, the chief will have to come up with a finance director to say, well, we made a decision that we have to live with, and it was the wrong one.
One thing I've learned throughout this process is we're going to continually have these conversations every few years about salaries, because everybody's adjusting. And as they adjust, we have to adjust. So we thought we were doing a wonderful thing a few years ago. It was a wonderful thing a few years ago. But since that time, money is flowing in America. And people are spending it, and they're giving premiums and bonuses to get folks in. And that puts us at a disadvantage. We don't necessarily have the same flow. Hopefully in 3 to 4 years, there's enough activity going on here that we don't have to sit and cringe about what's in place. But for right now, we got to have those conscious conversations. Also, as you begin to make those proposals, make sure you understand that your sanitation fund is one of your healthiest funds that you have here. So while the perception may be that privatization may be an option, also understand that one of the things that we do well is sanitation. We may not be able to necessarily keep the workers here, but the fund makes money. And so all those things are, I think, pertinent as you begin to have those conversations. But I mean, we can look at everything. I think at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt to look at anything. I mean, a few years back, they looked at privatizing the gas authority. We realized that wasn't necessarily the answer. We privatized the golf course. It worked out well for us. Sometimes some things need to be looked at, like the airport, because you don't really make any money there. But you got to look and see, Ms. Shank.
I just want to note that one thing to take into consideration is that sanitation does pay the general fund and admin expense reimbursement. So if you, just in the proposed tentative budget that I have before you for next year, for example, if you were to outsource sanitation, that's a loss of $170,000 to your general fund.
But that's not taking into consideration of any pay increases that we're gonna have to absorb right now. Is that correct?
But
Or
it's
not?
in its own fund. So those funds are completely in themselves. It's an enterprise fund. It doesn't directly reflect to general fund.
So did their salary come out the general fund?
No, they come out of their own enterprise fund.
Because that's
Correct.
their own sanitation
And,
fund.
and that's what you're
So-
talking about, the
Correct.
money is
So-
gonna come out of the enterprise fund, right?
Yes, but it comes to general fund. So if you were to eliminate this enterprise fund, you're now taking away $170,000 from your general fund.
Understood. But if they get raises,
It won't touch on, it
That's-
won't come close to 170 grand.
no, but it's gonna deduct that 170, it's gonna deduct from that 170 grand that you're.
No,
It's a
that is
different line.
Okay,
strictly,
that's what I'm
yep,
asking.
It's a
yep.
different line.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Two different pots of
Thank you for
money.
clarifying that.
So with all that being said, do we have any more questions for Mr. Masters before we forget why he's here? Seeing no questions, Mr. Masters, again, thank you. I think we still haven't got to the point of deliberate. Option 4, going directly to 15 an hour, is that an option for us right now?
No, not
Commissioner
financial.
Barr?
I don't think it's, I think we need to graduate that in terms of what we have. I think it's not an option right now.
We scale it, we'll phase it in. You agree with that? Phase it in. All right. Commissioner Campbell. Any thoughts on those two, on option 4? That's the $15 an hour blanket.
Oh,
Just going
no.
straight to 15.
No, I think it's something that we probably need to phase in.
Okay, all right, so we can, it's safe to say option 1 and option 4 are not viable options for right now. So options 2 and 3 are the considerations, along with also looking at a blanket $2 an hour raise, which is something that was spoken of by Commissioner Jones. And I think Commissioner Borum seemed to have a little bit of a thought on that as well. And so that gets us to at least looking at those numbers, seeing where we are, and looking at actuarial impacts, all but everything that goes along with that. Any other comments?
I just have one question. So, Shank, in terms of budget prep,
Mr. Manager, we
Holmes,
can't
could
hear
you
you.
please?
His
Please.
mic's never on. Just keep it on continuously.
Ms. Shank, in terms of budget prep, what's your timetable for having a number, whether it be based upon an option or not, a number for you to plug into the budget for salaries?
Realistically, my hopes were that today the commission would have a vote and a sentiment as to what direction you wanted staff to go towards as far as your personnel, because you are not only impacting general fund, but also the other funds. So until you make a decision with personnel, I cannot give you an adopted balanced budget. So even at the next workshop on the 26th, without a decision, I cannot give you a balanced budget.
Okay.
So you're giving me a moving target until you make a decision.
That's why you get the big bucks. So can you run, how long would it take you to run a number on a $2 hour raise per?
I can do it within the next 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, you can run it on a spreadsheet pretty quick, right?
Mhm.
All right, any?
That's a $2 an hour for all employees.
Correct.
That's one of the suggestions.
Okay, I'm just asking to make sure that she knows what she's running.
All right, and
Thank
so you budgeted thus far under option 2, which is about an $80,000 difference.
Correct.
Let's budget at the high option for now. That way, I think if you run at the high option, then anything that's less, it gives you the ability to move money to other places.
Correct.
Yeah, or keep it out, or keep it in reserves. And then we can talk about what we're going to sell later to make up for it. I think that's probably the fairest thing for you.
Correct.
Is we're 550 on option 3, looks like.
Mhm.
550 on option 3, you're 472 on option 2. If you run it about 550, we know it's pulling from reserves anyway. That at least gives you an opportunity to look at where we are from that standpoint. And then we can pull back. It's easier to scale down on this one.
Correct. And one thing I want to note, and we'll go over the carry forward of your cash that you're carrying forward that's unassigned, as well as the reserve unassigned balance. But one thing I want to note is that in the next fiscal year, you do have a $500,000 impact as a one-time cost, and that's for the radios. So although you are eating into your reserve this year, you're not going to have that ongoing expense.
All right. And we know that there's gonna be some offset on capital
Right.
improvements with ARPA and all the other stuff that's gonna balance out at some point, but we don't wanna rely on our ARPA for anything.
Mayor, are we going, all peers or revenue population cut? Because when we talk about the options.
No, we want all peers is what I was talking about. Look at the bottom numbers on those.
Well, see, because they differ,
They're bigger.
Correct. So when
Right.
the budget that I prepared for you is all peers option 2.
And the reason I said all peers because it was a higher number. And then that way, if we scale back, depending on whatever the commission decides as far as whether it's taking Commissioner Jones's approach or some variation of 2 and 3 or whatever it may be, then we're already at least in the range. And then that way, you know that your play is gonna be at least 80,000 one way or the other. And I think that it gets rid of some of your headache at that point.
Correct.
So again, Mr. Masters, we appreciate your patience. We always like when you come in here and start trouble.
Thank you all for your time. Very much
Yeah.
appreciated.
That's what happens, you get HR people on the commission. So he's in his wheelhouse. He's wanted to work with all those employees before. So,
All right,
thank you.
appreciate you. Thanks, sir.
All right, so we're gonna take a 5-minute break. After that, Commissioner Jones, your comments will be limited to 2 minutes for the rest of the day. All right, we're gonna reconvene. Item number 2, discussion and presentation of the budget fiscal year 21-22. Shrink.
All right, so at our last workshop, we were able to take a look at the revenues. I do want to go ahead and go down to page 7. So since the last workshop, nothing has changed. I do want to note that your operating cash balance forward, that is your unassigned cash balance. So you can spend it on anything. It's not tied to anything in specific. We are carrying forward 1.6 million. So that puts you at 4.1 cash carry forward. So from there, we can go ahead and start diving into the departments. First one we have is city commission. At your request, I did put in for each commissioner to have a budget to do community events. So you will see that increase of $20,000. And then also the SBDC increase of $4,000. As well as membership subscriptions and dues. There was an increase there as well. That's based on currently every single membership that the commission holds. Do you have any questions about the city commission budget?
No.
Okay. Next up, we have city manager. For city manager, I did reduce vehicle maintenance. That is due to, we are budgeting for a new vehicle, and in return, we would surplus an old used vehicle that is facing larger scale repairs if we do not go ahead and purchase the new one. Any questions on? So that is actually
can't
under
hear.
the state contract pricing. The vehicle that I priced is another Traverse. Because to me, that is the most economical for the space type of vehicle. And that's state contract pricing. I draw the line on that.
No,
Mr. Holmes,
it's
we
about
can't hear you.
$14,000 difference.
We can't hear.
EV, electric vehicles for city manager. Get them an EV.
I
You know,
did not. I
Don't
went
do
with
it.
a mid-sized SUV.
Oh,
I'm sure it would be significantly more expensive though.
I was just.
No Teslas here.
Oh.
you're not gonna be on the news tomorrow.
All
So,
right. Next up, we have city clerk. City clerk, you will see that there is a Municode update. That is something that we have to do every year, as well as the Novus agenda and shredding that we've put into the budget. We were able to make small cuts in a few other places based on actuals and where we're at this year and where we anticipate to be next year. So the net on that one was only $2,332 increase. And I do want to note every personnel section that you're seeing is slotted for option 2 of the entire peer group. So when you look at the total for the personnel, that's inclusive of pension, FICA, and health and insurance as well. So the personnel that you're seeing on every single department, I slotted all peer group option 2. Based on the conversation in the last meeting, the commission shared the sentiment that they were leaning towards option 2 or 3. So based on when I took a look at where the city was financially, I made the decision, yes, to go ahead and slot option 2 so that the commission would have a better idea of where they're at financially and what that impact is. Without putting something in that would have been all zero, you wouldn't have been able to see any type of impact. So I wanted you to have a better idea. Any questions on the city clerk budget? Okay, we can go on.
Yeah, the city clerk, executive salaries.
Sure.
I don't see it up there.
40,435. So, correct. So one of the main differences between executive and regular salaries, all that is it's an ADG internal thing. So based on where your cost activity center is where it bills to the GL. So currently Sunny, which is in the city clerk's budget, she comes out of regular salaries. Whereas in the past, Betsy was an executive for her cost center. Now, why HR, when the switch was made between those two positions, why the cost center was changed, I can't attest for that. But that's why it's put up that way.
Yeah, I just.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so the next one, moving on down. Finance. So the increase that you're gonna see, well, you have a decrease in personnel, slight decrease. And the increase that you're seeing first is gonna be for your second year contract for HCT, which is our auditors. And then also FGFO training for staff. And then I reduced uniforms, so we will not be getting uniforms in the finance department. So for a net, you have an increase of $5,248 or 1%.
And those executive salaries, include your salary?
That is my salary only.
Why go from 83 to 76?
Commissioner Jones? We can't
Put
hear
your mic
you.
on.
How did it go from 83.62 to 76 for next year's proposal?
So this budget was built with your previous finance director's position. Your future budget is with my position.
We got this shaking of our.
Yeah, keep fine.
All right, moving on. Human resources. Overall, this entire department has a decrease between personnel as well as we took down the schooling and conference down to one person traveling, which saved $1,000. So for a net, we have, hold on just a little bit. A net $9,608 in savings or a negative 6% impact.
So we still budget for the, go back, we're still budgeting for the second position
Correct.
for an HR assistant.
At this time, that position is still vacant and it is still slotted into human resources, yes.
But in all fairness and full disclosure, there's a possibility that that position is going to go to the grant.
Mr. Holmes?
Ooh, Zoom is such a fun thing. There's a possibility that that position is going to go over to the grant accounting side so that we can try to address some of those issues. So.
I got a comment.
Go ahead.
In terms of, that's a good point because I went to the last policy meeting and was connected with East Civis, which my understanding is eCivis, they do grant administration, and where you would typically pay 30,000 for a person to do a grant, or 10%, whatever the grant amount is, you can pay, if you're a member of FLC, then you only pay 2,000. You're around 2,000 or so. And what happens is you have full access to all of the grants administration, and you get a person to help administer that grant from initiation to completion. So it doesn't, you don't have to use your own staff to do that. So that's just another option that we have that we need to explore. And it is in eCivis, so I can give more details around that. Be happy to do so.
Go ahead.
So you want them to hold off on that position?
In my opinion, I think from what I understood, eCivis and the administration that they use through the Florida legal cities, that's what they do all the time, and they provide you with a person, no matter how many grants you get. I mean, you get 5 grants, you get a person to go from initiation to completion of that grant. And that's what my understanding was. So I think we can use that service to where we don't have to at least increase staff for that particular.
So
We can hold it, but we got an option there that we need to explore, that we can save money possible.
that one would not fulfill this capacity because this position that we've discussed it's more of a clerical position. So whereas the league may provide someone for grant administration, they're not going to come and have access to ADG to put in that requisition, to pay that invoice, to do that end user processing that a clerical staff would do. And that's where the void is currently, and where we're seeing lag time is more on the clerical side of it, not so much the administration as far as grant writing or being out in the field. Maybe I'll defer to Jonathan for some more comments on that.
Okay.
Lauren or Ms. Shank may have already addressed
Yeah,
this,
Michael?
but some of the workflow issues that we're dealing with, and most of it is because of our recent success. And another concern we should have is there's going to be a significant amount of funding coming through our federal and state partners in the next couple of years related to the ARPA funding, not to mention the 4.3 million that we're set to get in ARPA funds. We need to be able to do the clerical type activities, stuff that doesn't typically come from a outsourced grant manager. The grant managers, what they typically do is they monitor for compliance on submitting quarterly or annual reports. Simply, have you drawn down this amount of funding, or have you achieved your scope of work as laid out in your annual plan? We could probably give you a more detailed report later on, but I don't have the benefit of what you said, Lauren. I was trying to hear in there and I couldn't hear, so I came out here.
You need a secretary. That's what you saying?
It's a clerical administrative support staff, yes, because not only has the city historically had issues with their financial reporting as it pertains to your federal and state grants, with the influx of new grants and what we have on the horizon, keep in mind that if you are at any point in compliance, the city would have to pay that money back. So if you're not reporting things correctly or spending things correctly, that's a liability. So the lag time in this is solely an administrative clerical support staff.
Yeah, my concern is that you still have one person HR department. And regardless of how much duties overlap, it's still a one person HR department. And, you know, God forbid something happens. But if Ms. Jones leaves for an extended period of time, somebody's got to do some heavy lifting on and double duty. because you only have a one-person HR department. And while she's a generalist, you still having those single-person departments comes with a bunch of other risk and problems as it relates to if there's ever a transition or an extended absence. And so I'm not in favor of a one-person department. That's just my thoughts. Because we're taking somebody who's new to HR and giving them no support. And to me, that's a setup for failure.
I'm gonna have to disagree with that, and simply because in the absence of HR, my department did step in and they have been giving that support and training Ms. Jones. So she is not in absence of any type of help.
Now, that's fine, but again,
I'm not
it's
speaking to the
not- it's-
position, like,
no, I'm
as you
fine.
can see, it's budgeted there, it has not moved, but.
Yeah, I understand, but at the end of the day, the one thing we talked about was separation of duties. And historically, where we've been is putting those things in place. I don't care if the duties overlap or not. I just don't want to see a department with one person. I stand by it, and I'm gonna feel like that until I turn 80. I just believe that when you've got one person in the department, it happens. So let's just say Ms. Jones, for whatever reason, has to go somewhere, and she's gone for a couple of months. Somebody from finance now has to go to HR because there's nobody else in HR. So, and that's going to take away from something in finance. So for as much assistance and coordination is there, that's great. That's what we need to do as teams. But we still need to be conscious of the fact that there has to be other things that can be put in place to make sure that we don't fall back into what we've gotten away from, which was having one-person departments. It didn't work before. It ain't gonna work now, regardless of how much coordination and help you put in place. And so I'm glad there's coordination. It should have been coordination well before you got here. But the reality of it is, it wasn't. But now we're at a point, if we got coordination and some additional support, then it should work super. Because there's gonna be more people working towards the one goal.
We can leave that position hasn't been taken out. We can add a position, whether it be in finance or grants or the other functions that we're talking about. I was trying to be as conservative as I could be in the salaries and in the workforce, but I understand your point, Mr. Mayor, and not arguing it. So we can definitely do that.
I'm just one voice. I'm just one voice in my opinion. I'm just one voice. It takes at least three to get us there. So, I mean, what's the flavor of the rest of the commission?
I feel the same way. I know it's a demanding job that she has, and based on the prior issues we had before, we definitely need to have her some support in there. So I agreed not to take that position away from HR.
Commissioner Campbell.
I agree. I would like for it to stay.
Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I'm all in for business continuity, but again, whatever the commission would like, if we need to have business continuity, so whatever it takes to make big business continuity.
And I think the other part is we can find somebody who has HR experience as well. It should be of a greater benefit as well as we move forward, so that somebody who may have some familiarity there, it brings, as we continue to move forward, they can work in tandem. And that's gonna cover a need at the end of the day. So that's the thought. Next up, anything else in HR? Let's go to the next department.
All right, so facilities maintenance, you do see an increase in the regular salaries. I do want to note that this is because that tentative number houses 3 positions. So you have Sean Ladd, Justin Bridges, and Kedrick Canty. At this time, where they currently sit in their cost centers is the way that it is budgeted. However, that is not how it was adopted last year.
So Sean, as the Public Works Director, is in the facilities budget?
Correct. That is his current cost center.
So what, we need to break him out as an executive salary as a director?
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to do it that way. So we can see what that position does compared to the others.
And one thing I do want to note is that I did add building maintenance. So the increase from $300 to $5,000 is based on the need for Justin to have the ability to do improvements to facilities that are not built into the specific budget. So for instance, this year we encountered a lock change that needed to be done for planning and zoning. And they don't have a facility budget, so that would need to come out of facilities maintenance. And that was something that wasn't budgeted. So I increased it to add in budget for a small facility maintenance. These are not capital repairs, capital replacements, or anything like that.
With the PW, wouldn't we be able to spread him out over multiple funds since he's overall public works? If he's the public works director, he's a,
Sean?
yeah.
Yes, you can change his cost center and move him into a different department. The way that I did the budget,
I'm saying, can we spread him out? So over.
it's all general fund though. So there's really no need financially to spread him across different cost centers. Unless,
You take some from the enterprise fund,
correct,
which is my thought.
which is part
because-
of your.
Which is part of his duties.
Correct. So that would be part of your administration reimbursement. We could include his salary, yes.
Right. Part of it.
And to be honest, I think we already do include a part of it.
Can you? just-
I can verify that. Yep.
That's just my thought.
Would it be the whole salary?
No, it would be a
of
portion.
it, because it's spread out over various, over multiple funds.
Yep. So the logic would be that you would have Sean in one department, and then you would have in transfer in for part of his salary to the general fund.
It would almost be like a reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay. Y'all, everybody follow?
You follow?
Okay. All right. Any other questions on maintenance?
Then we have IT. IT, you have your Inspired Technology contract. And under software subscriptions and licenses, you'll see that we do have Office 365 included in there. Yes, that's something that we have to do. And then also hardware. We have replacement computers built into that budget, as well as tough books for the police department. Tough books are something that should be replaced. We should be replacing 5 every single year.
Are we?
No,
Are we? So it's time for this contract to come up for negotiation again, right? Oh, yeah.
The tough books were included after we did the purchase of our last set of laptop computers. The idea of replacing them or 5 of them every so often, every budget is just coming up now. So this will be the first time we were able to replace them since we purchased our last set 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
Are we running 3-year cycles on them? That's what we're doing?
I'd have to look at the life cycle.
What's your cycle?
I believe it is a 3-year, 3 or 4 year cycle. It takes a while for them to be built, and once they get shipped in. Last year last time it took, I think, up to 6 or 8 months before we got them in. It was for us and the fire department.
Any questions? Thank you. So I think that contract, the IT contract was 3-year contract initially, right?
I thought it was a year. I thought it was annual. It's just annual.
Ms. Thomas?
I think, sir, it was a 3-year, but we renewed it for a 1 year, I think last year. I can check because they were installing the new phone system. And they were in the middle of the completion of that project. So I think we just renewed it for 1 year, and I think it's going to come up for renewal before the end of this year.
All right, so it's, I mean, we need to track that because I know
Yes, sir.
part of the reason the rates were where they were was because we were behind from a technological standpoint, and they were supposed to be significantly reduced once we kept our end of the bargain and made life a lot easier. And so it looks like we've significantly replaced our machinery and done some of the necessary upgrades. So we should be looking at that contract for modification, or at least for some changes. So if you can maybe let us know by the next commission meeting where we stand, or shoot an email out or something, so that everybody kind of knows what the
Contract renews
what the
February
date
of
is.
2022.
2022.
February of 2022.
So we need to start having those conversations soon.
Yes, sir.
So let's start with having that conversation. Let's look at renewables and see what the conversation is with Inspire and going from there. We just want to stay on top of it. So if we can make sure we calendar that so that we don't lose track of it. Anything else as far as equipment and software? I know we're gonna have some software upgrades and challenges with the gym. But those may be based on what we have with CARES, something that may be covered with ARPA. And we need to check and see if, we need to also check and see if the locks are something that may be covered. Because I think you may be able to get some of the IT stuff covered.
Can they just rekey them?
Huh?
Can they rekey them? Rekey the locks?
They can rekey them, but I think it's gonna be, but that whole system needs to be changed out.
The locksmith that we use for the city, he went over there last week and he was looking at some of them, but he said a lot of the locks, they're prehistoric time, please, so it's best to redo the whole locks instead of rekeying them. Because he said he can't guarantee that the rekeying would even work.
That works in our prehistoric building. But yeah, we can look at that as well. And I mean, that code access, maybe some of those things or something that may be COVID related. What else?
All right, next up, we have legal. Notable change is that we are moving salaries into professional services. And then we also added schooling and conferences for the city attorney. After that, we have general admin. That one had a net zero sum. We were able to basically modify the lines around based on currently where money is being spent.
Yeah, so you switched it because when the transition went from Mr. Holmes, he was considered to be an employee as opposed to a contractor.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Where are we? All right.
So,
Other government services.
yep. Liability insurance, that is based upon an estimate. We're still actually working with FMIT on exact figures. They did, okay, okay. So I'll double check that number as well.
That was up significantly, right?
Sir.
It was up significantly, right?
Yeah, well, the email said losses. So what I did was actually pulled the invoice. So I need them to translate losses to invoice.
So we started having this conversation earlier today, so everybody's kind of filled in where we are. So there were some properties that looked like they were not a part of what we had for liability insurance, like they'd never been covered. And so there were gaps that were closed as it related to properties. they were able to discover some discrepancies within the policy, which led to increase of rates because there were some things that didn't look like they were there. We found out with some of the stuff, based upon certain claims that were put in place, that there were some questions in place. So basically, Mr. Holmes called for an audit internally to look at where we were from a policy standpoint, reviewing coverages for every facility and every vehicle. That brought to light that there were certain things that needed to be in place, as we were also looking at acquisition of new facilities and acquisition of the boat and some other things. And so that's why you end up with what appears to be, it may be up to 50 grand in additional insurance, right?
I'm not sure. Like I said, the email that they sent was based on losses, whereas the information that I have is invoices.
Right.
So we are going to be sending back a response for them to clarify what that means.
Okay. So,
Tell me what this translates to in netting.
right.
Correct.
They gave us increases in our claims paid, et cetera, but I didn't see a bottom line on what the increase was gonna be. And that's why my response was, what's the number?
Correct.
Mayor, I just need to understand losses. So that's what we need to try and get an understanding of what losses mean.
Claims paid out.
Okay,
Vehicle accidents, those kinds of things.
okay.
We're up.
Mhm.
Ooh.
And let me just ask a question. So you said there were some things that wasn't insured prior?
Yeah.
Wasn't any vehicles or anything, right?
It
That
was
were lost?
new batches. No, none of those were lost.
Oh,
So,
okay, yeah.
so we avoided the catastrophic mistake.
Gotcha.
And so they were able to find out that there were some things that fell through the cracks as you rotated out certain vehicles and added new vehicles in. So that worked out. And so I think the bugs are worked out of that system, and I think staff's done a great job of kind of catching that stuff and putting it where it needs to be. So.
Next up, USDA, sorry, go up one more, Sunny. That one I just wanted to note on there, it looks like a significant increase, but we had the revenue budget and not the expense in FY '21. So this is just a carry forward of that project for the business incubator. And then next up, we have planning and zoning. This department, me and Ms. Walsh dug into very heavily. And it had a lot of moving pieces because we did have professional service for a portion of time during this fiscal year, as well as an increase, a significant increase in our legal advertising. So the notable places that you're going to see are training, as well as postage and freight for mailing out items. And then also your legal advertising.
Professional services, you mean we were contracting.
Correct.
Contracting planners. Yeah.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay.
So on the legal, I would anticipate that we're going to still be up on legal advertisements
Correct.
again, because there's a lot of action.
Currently, year to date, we're about $10,000 that we've spent on legal advertising. And what we did was with any lapsed salaries that we had versus the professional services we were paying for, we moved that money into legal advertising. So that's how we've made it so far this year.
Right. Any questions on planning?
Yeah. Going back again to the executive salary.
Mhm.
For 2021 of 65,000 and it's projected for 22, 78, 749.
Correct.
And that's projected
is.
based upon option 2 again.
Yes.
So that's that step in pay deal? That's, that goes back to the question or statement I tried to make. In doesn't matter who the individual is in that position, but to the point that salary right now is 65,000, and what it will go up to based on that that option that's given. Which increase, as we see, is 13,749.
So that is what was budgeted. So if you had a previous planning and zoning director that was budgeted at 65,000, or if it was vacant at that time, because to be honest, that's a very rounded number. It could have been that it was vacant during that time and your previous finance director, along with city management at the time, slotted in an estimated amount. We can go back and pull to see historically what other directors were paid, but I believe that was done during the HR process whenever we were hiring.
Position was vacant.
It was-
Yeah.
And it was based on whatever the hourly was.
50 an hour, I believe, is what.
Well, they still, previous two.
Mr. Holmes?
Oh, to two. Yeah, we were paying 50. He said, he just stated what the previous contract salary was for the
Correct.
planning director. They were on limited hours, but
Right.
those limited hours, as activity got greater, started becoming more and more like permanency.
But the previous planning director was at the 65,000. Is that
No,
correct?
that's a slotted salary number.
Yeah, I got it. I was just wondering. Yeah, I was just asking that one question.
Oh, about whether
Yeah.
the last time we filled the position,
Mhm.
that person was here for a number of years, so their salary was a little bit higher.
If you want the history on the planning director, what Ms. Jones can do is she can email you the specifics of the history on those.
I'm having a
The
problem.
last time we had the last time we had a full-time director prior to just the temporary spot being filled, when
Thad Crow, I believe.
was before Bernadette. Was
Sorry,
Thad
right,
Crow.
Thad Crow.
Was Thad Crow. And
Then
he
we
stayed
went
here
through
he was here for
Dean
7 years.
Mims and,
Steve Locknick.
correct. And those were $50 an hour people. And while they were limited hours, ultimately, I think one of them ended up at about a $75,000 a year range before it was over. So
But prior we had Ms. Fisher. What did Ms. Fisher make? Was it that?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
That's what I was saying.
Ms.
Carry
Jones, can you look that up while we continue?
Carry on.
What was that last name again?
Fisher?
Fisher.
Bernadette Fisher.
So as we're doing that, I think a conversation has to, and I think there's been some research done on it, but with the activity that we're having, if not now, soon we're gonna have to make a decision as to whether we rebuild, whether we bring back our building officials and do inspections in-house, or we continue with the county the way we are and build the planning department back up to where it is. And it's a numbers game, but I think also part of it is as you begin to become more active in the community with more activity from the commercial side, from the residential side. I mean, how long do we really want the county to dictate where we go? So, and it's a commission decision. It may not be one that needs to be made under this tight budget, but it's a consideration that we've got to look at as we begin to plan for the future. And, I think Ms. Walsh has been doing some cost analysis as well as, Mr. Holmes and Ms. Shank looking at the historic perspective and where we were. We know that it wasn't a zero-sum game previously when we did it. It probably cost us somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 a year as we ran those departments. But we know the reality of activity in Palatka is going to change. You stay busy doing inspections. And we've got to look at, I think, a multitude of things, whether we bring in a separate fire marshal and whether that becomes too cumbersome for the chief, whether we have a chief building official again, whether that's an employee or a contractor, We've done it both ways. Do we bring back the planning clerks in the same way?
Look at our
Do we
fee
bring,
structure.
do we bring code enforcement back up under planning? All those things are there. And so those are all things I think as a commission, we've got to think about in the future, the near future, as we begin to move forward, because we don't know how long the county wants to continue doing our inspections. So
We also need to look at our fee structure. I mean, there's no reason why advertising should be a net expense. That should be being paid by the applicants. And the same for, well, I'll leave it at that. Your point's well taken.
but I think those are all things, and then I think, that's a workshop, or at least a conversation that we've got to start to have. And it's going to be necessary for every commissioner to really give input and direction for staff as we move forward. Commissioner Bourne, again.
No, I mean, you made some good points. I think we need to be in a position where we're self-sufficient. We're not having to depend on other agencies to help us be successful. We need to look at those critical areas of need and prioritize those, and let's make those things happen. Even our engineering, our engineer, what we need when we do multiple projects, road projects or whatever else we do, water projects and all those things. So we're paying out quite a bit of money for other services. And if we had that internally, we wouldn't have to keep paying those large amounts of money each time. I think I forgot the amount that we pay per every time we do a big major project as it relates to engineering piece of it, but it's really costly.
Anyone else? And those are all things that we're going to cover in the strategic planning process. So just to I just wanted to make sure I at least put it out there while we're doing the budgeting. Next up.
Next up, we have the police department. A notable change is that we did increase the overtime. I do want to note that this is offset by contracts that we have, so there is revenue that comes in to offset this amount. But as you can see historically, we're ranging 160, 2020, of course, the year of COVID, the beginning of COVID, I should say. We saw a decrease, but where we sit today in FY21, we're already over 105,000. So when I take a look at these numbers, I truly analyze on what's happened in the past, where we're sitting at today, and what we anticipate for the future.
So with executive salaries, that includes chief, and is that the captains? And it's just the four of y'all?
I'll have to get back to you on that, but I will tell you, whenever I did that piece, in order to line them up, what I do in ADG is I run a cost center analysis. So, and then I pull those positions into those specific lines.
So how do we get an $80,000 increase there?
I can break it down for you. But it's based at where they're currently being paid from, with option 2, all peers.
Yeah.
And I can give you the breakdown of who
I'm about to
specifically
sound
is
like
in there.
Jones in a minute. Right.
And clerical as well, are they gaining a person, or again, that's the increased salary together?
Correct. That's everyone that's pulling into that cost center.
You got what, 5 clerical?
I can give you the breakdown.
We can't hear you.
I can give you the breakdown. I'll send that out.
Okay. All right, go back. Okay, you can scroll down.
Are we still
Go back up. Go up.
line item with the police athletic league? Oh,
Huh? Page 2?
This is page 2, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Jones.
line item with the police athletic league,
There it is.
Yes, $15,000.
Yeah. So that what we can, that's your budget. Do we contribute anything to that? For the city?
That's what we contribute. That's for the counselors.
That line item is for summer camp counselors. It's strictly pinpointed for counselors' pay, things like that for the summer camp.
So they're not included in our internship?
That's separate. That's a separate line.
That's separate?
So, yeah, they're separate. And so historically, you got another 15 in there.
Well, actually, no, sir. So it came in a different manner
Right.
back when Matt Reynolds was here, is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
So what we did is we went through our what line is, we went through our budget and we carved out money to be able to put into community services in the form of the police athletic league, to be able to pay for the counselors' pay and things of that nature. And that's where we created that line, along with what was additionally created and given to for Matt Reynolds for other counselors or other
Department? For the internship.
yes.
So we have a line in the commission for $20,000 for interns. And then this line specifically is for the police athletic league camp counselors. So they invoice us $15,000 and the city pays them,
All counselors aren't,
paid out of the internship.
yeah, because they're not all internship within that, they don't qualify for the actual internship. We have adults that actually serve as counselors.
So the interns, are we using the other interns? Do we use some of them at the PAL camp too? The 20,000?
We usually get maybe one or two a year, depending on how many the city has. We do add them in depending on where they go, but they're not factored into what we do every year as far as our counselor to camper ratio.
All right. So back to Commissioner Jones. What was your question?
Yeah, no, I just want to know.
Okay.
I saw it both ways. I saw the internship. I just want to know, was it an opportunity for them to get an intern? I didn't know you already.
Yes.
That's all.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Do we have any other lines in terms of, I mean, so that's the total we give out to PAL for the 35 total?
No, so it's not 35, it's only 15, and that was the 15 that we pulled out of the police department budget.
20, we got 20 that goes to interns. So those are the interns that may work with the clerk. Those are the interns that may work with recreation or community affairs. And then you've got 15 that goes to the counselors for the camp. Let's just say it's a blanket 15 to PAL. That's just a blanket donation to PAL. That's how it's worked. And they use it primarily for the camp.
All right, so next up on police, CIP. I will note that in here, in the CIP, it does not include $100,000 that the chief made as a request for the roof repair for the facility. That is not included in this budget.
Just tear the building down.
Is there a reason why?
It's gonna cost more than 100.
Why it's not included?
It's a CIP for what?
For the roof repair.
Because it is a decision unit. If it's the wish of the commission, I will add that in.
Your quote's going up to 100 now.
Excuse me, sir.
The quote's at 100 now.
Well, right now, we've actually looked at a quote. We just got it patched once again, but we looked at a quote for getting it redone. They didn't take in consideration for the tower that's up there, as well as the air conditioning units. But when we got the quote, it was at 66,000. Not looking at both of those, so it's gonna be
at least 80. Sell it.
Is it your wish that you want me to go ahead and add that in?
Not mine, but I don't know what the commission's pleasure is.
Bring it back when you. Yeah.
Okay,
So
kicking that can.
I think we need to look at other options.
Yeah,
So
okay.
deferred maintenance at its greatest.
As far as the grants go, I was able to speak with Captain Newcomb. We rolled some of those forward because we're not able to spend them in this fiscal year, or the delivery time is in next fiscal year. So grants were carried forward. And your grants are matched by revenue coming in too. So you have the expense and the revenue.
Should Jag invoke?
So exactly, the bulletproof vest grant, as
Yeah.
well as, and we fill those on a 5-year period, depending on the officer, as well as the new officers coming in. So depending on when that comes about, depends on if it needs to be moved forward to the next year. And then the JAG, as you're aware, as you alluded to, the JAG grant, depending on when it comes in, is the same.
Are we getting we getting more help from Congresswoman Kamek on the grants?
We are requesting, yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief, or as it relates to PD?
I don't think the chief think about maybe I'm missing scholarship.
It's in there. It's in a different line of, I think if you move down a little bit. It may be up by the personnel section. Lauren is
Yeah, I'm
the,
looking at it now.
it's under recruitment and scholarships. It was there.
Oh, it's right on the second page. Go up, Sunny. Right there at 5270 is the object code, and it's $20,000 for public safety scholarships.
That's correct.
So that's still in there.
All right.
You already have it allocated to somebody?
For next year, no, sir.
Let me ask you this, so when a person, we give it to a person and they unsuccessful, how does that work for the scholarship? Do they get it again?
Unsuccessful for the scholarship?
That scholarship, to send someone to
That's
the
correct.
academy?
Yes, sir.
So how does it work when, if that person or go to the academy and unsuccessful, do we have to
okay.
pay again, or how that works?
So it depends on where they left off. And no, sir, they give them credit for the portion that they completed, and then we just continue on and pay the rest that they hadn't completed. So no, you don't have to get a whole new scholarship all over again. No, you can continue on where you left off on the first original.
And because I'm not really familiar, how do we pay them? How do we compensate them when they're going to school?
So if we hire them in an officer's position. We just can't pay them as a high-risk person until they get sworn in. So they get paid out of one of the officers' slot, which would be the police officer's position, in which to underline which they be hired at.
So there's no difference between an uncertified officer and a certified officer. We hire them as an officer, but at that point, they're uncertified. So is there a different pay
Yes.
scale for uncertified versus?
So yes,
certified?
there is. So there's a built-in 43-hour slot for them,
Hmm.
and they cannot get any of the sworn or any extra duty, any overtime or anything like that, and they can't get any incentives as well.
But the base pay, they get an officer's.
The
base pay.
hourly rate, yes, sir.
And what's that minimum? What's that hourly?
17, I want to say 1747, 1742, one of those.
So haven't been entertained that when we hire these potential, we hire them on to be a law enforcement officer. But until they're certified, a different rate of pay.
A separate,
why I asked-
lower rate of pay? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Well, what we do, and one of the biggest things we have and what we put in place in minor recruitment is being able to go out and get those individuals to come and entice them to come to the city of Palatka. That is one of the carrots we dangle for them, is the ability to be able to not only have that pay, but have that scholarship to be able to attend the academy. So in our efforts to fight and recruit, that is the tools we put in place, because they can also go and get the same pay for other organizations that's doing the recruitment and paying for the scholarships in the academy as well.
Well, I look at it as incentive. If I'm not getting that officer pay, that's what I'm striving to do versus, some people are just not motivated. But that's a general conversation. I know because I went through one of those similar programs where prior to getting the certification, you get paid as pretty much a lower rate until you get that certification. So things change, though, I understand.
Correct, and also we have assigned a contract, and we let them know that if they fail to complete, then they are released from the program.
Thank you, sir.
Been pretty successful with that since the last year, haven't we?
That is correct, yes, sir.
4?
As far as minorities, we brought in just this last year, we brought in 4, and just 1 recent.
How many we retained? All 4?
So far, yes, we've returned all 4.
That's good. Thank you, sir.
Anything else for PD? All right, thanks, Chief. Next department.
Sorry, code enforcement, that budget was flat.
There's 2 salaries.
I don't know off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Is that 2 salaries?
That's Aaron and David probably.
Probably.
So Aaron's listed on the codes.
Yeah, Aaron, a portion of her salary come out of code.
Aaron is 50-50, you're correct. So that is 1.5 of a positions, because Aaron's cost center is split. So part of the exercise whenever I was doing this budget is putting in formulas that automatically drag over the cost of personnel, benefits, FICA, et cetera, based on a report that I ran out of ADG. So if a person like Aaron was split between 2 departments, you're gonna see her salary in this department as well as the other ones. And I had to do that exercise for every single employee. So I apologize, I don't have them all memorized, but I did run the report.
So just a point clarification. We had the CRA meeting advertised for 5. So do we have anybody on the line or?
I am.
Mayor Hill, this is Sunny. I have Commissioner Jeff Rose and DPI Representative Ms. Kemp on the line waiting for the CRA meeting.
Okay, tell them we're almost done. Appreciate you. Thank you for your patience. Next department.
Next department is fire. I won't call Chief Shell back up, sorry. No, I won't.
That would be.
Chief Taylor, fire.
Don't call him up. Go ahead.
Notably on executive
Chief.
salaries, you do have the fire marshal. This year it was budgeted at half, meaning that halfway through the year, we would hire that position. As of yet, it has not been advertised or filled. So for next year, in continuity, you would go ahead and budget the full position for the year.
That's a fire marshal assistant chief.
Yes, sir.
Public safety scholarship for fire as well. There's 20,000 in that line.
Did you use any of it?
We've got 1 student that is starting fire. She finished EMT. She starts fire in September. Should be hireable late December, January.
Any more participation in the high school? Are we funding the high school program again this year?
I think so. Yeah, the school side is growing, and we've got a few more guys that are stepping up wanting to take part in teaching.
Okay.
I think that's going to work out for us.
Running any job fairs, chief?
Not yet, but we usually do them when they have them.
How far are you down?
We got 4 definite. I think I'm probably gonna lose at least 1 more.
And then you still got your grant positions?
Still trying to keep them full.
All right.
Can. We did get 1 application today or yesterday.
CIP expenses, currently this year, we received revenue that we are not going to be able to spend by the end of the fiscal year. So we pushed that purchase into next fiscal year, but I did make a note on that. Keep going down a little bit, so right there. The CIP expense, part of that is funded from this fiscal year. We're just carrying it forward.
All right. Anything, any questions on fire? Next up. See, that was easy, chief.
Yeah, I was about to say, you got off easy. All right, street. On this one, you'll note that the DOC prison crew guard, I kept that same amount in the budget. I just moved it into professional services. 37,497 was put into streets department. The other 20,000 is put into cemetery. So you will see that in each of those lines. But it also includes other items in there. So that includes your on-call, your iWorks, and then mowing and Fleetmatics as well.
So you left
I left that same amount.
and you broke it down.
Correct. DOT contracts, those are offset by the same exact revenue coming in. So that's a net zero on both of those as far as your traffic light repair and street light repair. And capital outlay, they only had 1 item.
Nothing for sidewalks this year?
Which one are you looking at? Sidewalk repairs?
Yeah,
No.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes, sir.
why did we scrap sidewalks?
Typically, we haven't funded sidewalks out of the general fund, sir. It's come from Better Place.
Are we funding it out of Better Place again this year?
Lauren,
Yes,
fund sidewalks?
yes.
All right, I'll wait till we get there. All right.
Next up, we have cemetery. So the one notable change, like I said, you're gonna see that $20,000 increase. That is for the mowing.
I see the increase for tree removal too. Did we spend 20 on tree removal last year?
In FY '20, no, you spent 12.
Yeah.
However, that money is designated, so a portion of it is considered special. So you cannot spend it on anything else. I kept it flat for
Okay.
anticipation that with, I don't know, with staff being able to reevaluate, they may want to do more tree removals this year. Cultural services, part-time employee that was budgeted this fiscal year in there has
Go
been.
back, go back to the cemetery just quick, right quick.
Sorry.
So I asked a question, I guess about a week ago, about the restroom facilities, the building at the cemetery. Is that building in need of any repairs? The
Is a
restroom,
what, sir?
is that are the restroom facilities out there? Because I've heard some people complain about them. Are they in need of any repairs or upgrades to them?
We went out and looked at them firsthand. There is a need for some repairs. Apparently, there had been some damage done since the last time that Mr. Bridges had looked at them. Most of the repairs he thought were going to be relatively minor, could be handled in-house. Difficulties running into is that when he leaves them open, people, they've been vandalized. And so I guess they fixed them before and Somehow in the process, they've been damaged again. So we went out and looked at them and noted some things that he could do. So there's roof repair. They're flat roofs, same thing. We've got so many places. And so, yeah, he was putting together a list of what it would cost to bring them back up to speed.
Should we need to put a placeholder there? Or is it something that we can deal with from contingency?
Happy to put a placeholder in there, certainly. I don't know, just to be safe, why don't you, everything costs so much these days, why don't you budget 10?
Okay.
And if we're doing it in-house, then we should be able to get that done. He didn't seem to think that it would be a major issue, mostly was cosmetic. But, yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get that added in.
Over there, safe stuff on call.
Sure, so a portion of the cemetery pays for specific professional services. So when I drilled down to look at exactly what was being spent historically, so what was included in that 9,000 figure right there, that's where I was able to see that there are additional things coming out of that line. So I wanted to make sure that I had noted them in there, so the commission was aware of what professional services are included in that.
So the safe touch is the alarm system?
Yes.
And that, so each one of them.
Oh, that was so the mowing was the emergency cuts that were taking place? Is that what that was?
Correct.
When the prison crew wasn't coming out?
Correct. So what I did was I took the $57,000 for the prison
And
crew
you split it up into
and
20
split
there
it
and 37
based
there.
on where our current contracts were.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So
All
she
right.
moved,
Yeah.
moved the
So
20.
she split one crew into two different lines.
Correct. Based on what our current,
Okay. All right.
cultural services. The part-time employee was reallocated to cleaning services. So that is actually spread through different departments within general fund. So you're not going to see it directly in this specific one.
All right.
Do you want to speak to exactly how many different?
That was actually Lorenzo Smith old position. He was the one that handled most of our cleaning. But since then, we have kind of spread it over Public Works, City Hall, Airport, and Coach Arts. And that's Mr. Ty Fields is the one that's doing the cleaning for the facilities.
Crucial cleaning.
Yeah, crucial solution.
For total, the net on this department though was a decrease of 13,000 or -9%, and that is due to the cleaning being parsed out into different areas.
And can I add one to
Yeah.
that, Lauren? If we can, instead of having it break down into different departments, then we just put it up on one. I talked to Ty today, and it's easier for the one invoice instead of doing 3 different invoices.
We can talk about that tomorrow. Okay.
You can work on the billing. I mean, the billing part is easy, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And recreation, so I did note on here that it is split funded, so this is the other 50% of Aaron's salary is going into this department.
Three.
3. Well, 2.5.
Yeah, the other one that Joey Pound had.
So the cut right get paid out of 3 different funds?
No.
I will also email you exactly what his cost center is. Yeah.
I think I just get, by my book here, I think I just get paid out of that one right there. Yes. If you do the numbers on what I'm looking at, that's the projection of the
Option 2, yeah.
All right,
Field maintenance, was an increase.
And then just a note that the Jenkins funding is only, that's only, you budget that at 80.
Correct.
All right.
Parks, once again, based on employee cost center analysis that I did, pulled those specific salaries into these lines.
And that's 2 people, all right?
If you're wanting to dig down into specifically who gets paid from where, I can provide you that. Yeah.
But this was about, here, book park, maintenance. 2,000.
Mhm.
There, Mr. Not bathroom, I know we did some repairs there. The bath restrooms over there, but they had some safety hazards out there 2 weeks ago. And it's on the playground, swings. I think I took some pictures, I didn't show, apologize. But I think they're gonna need a little more than $2,000 over there at that park. They also have some safety issues for the roll down. Where I'm quite sure.
And those items right there, the roll down door, and then also the doors are in this year's budget supposed to be repaired. Actually, Justin is working, we're trying to find doors that's gonna handle the wear and tear of the vandalism. And then the roll down doors for the concession stand, and we also want to redo the kitchen area. And I'm setting aside some money out of my program budget for this year to fix all that before we get into next year's budget. So that's why it's just the expense you see now, just a normal, i.e. Pest control and cleaning expenses and small repairs into next year's budget.
So then I see the Department of Correction approval guard again.
Now that.
Where is that?
Yeah, that I'm gonna have to take a look at.
Yeah, because I didn't.
That's the
Yeah.
third. That's not the 37.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the third crew.
Oh, there was a third crew. Okay.
That's not on this sheet right here. Not on the sheet that I got.
The reason why I asked that about, I would like to see that in there, because you got attention to the, I think Brian, you got 6,000 over there, but again, Fred Green, 3,000. And I'm telling that attention because of the safety factor. That's the mere reason I'm telling you. The swings over there, expecting me to.
Well, when we created the budget, I was more or less looking to that the complex would be completed by now, and some of the renovation of the complex will spill over into the Booker Park renovations. But with the process of that, I need to move some more money. We got that, that'll be taking place now. Me and Justin is actually working on a priority list, and actually, like I said, the doors and the roll down was already in place to be fixed. And down the park, we'll go over there and take a look and see exactly what we need to fix. But we do have a little money set aside in the program budget that I can move around to get any kind of safety measures fixed.
Can y'all forward him the pictures as well, or take him over there? All right. Keep rolling.
All right. Price Martin, building maintenance, was decreased by 4,500.
Because of grant.
Well, because we had a grant that posed to come in and do a lot of major renovations to the Price Morton Center.
I just said that.
Yeah, I know. He had that look like he wasn't really sure. Yeah.
Water taxis, we did have an increase of $19,000 for the liability insurance. Right now, the water taxi contract is slated at 0 because that is still under negotiation.
I move we sell them.
In all seriousness, if the commission, we're ready to do something like that, then we can definitely explore at least the marketing of the newest one that we are supposedly receiving in the next couple of weeks.
I
The
thought
other
we
ones,
had already talked about that.
sir,
I thought we previously, you were gonna be looking into.
we
I
have
guess,
been
getting-
we, based upon just the desire to provide more information, we did reach out to a number of different sources to see if there was a market for that particular riverboat. We've not gotten anything specific back yet, but there's another issue, and that would be going to DOT on both the state and federal level to make sure that we could, and I wouldn't do that without commission directive.
Well,
I know I
thought-
made mention of that before, so
Well, yeah, I thought we were gonna,
I thought we were gonna.
pursue
explore that.
checking in with the grant requirements of whatever. So if we need to do that, I guess we can.
So without taking an action item on it, sounds like there's a consensus for you to at least explore the options.
It's been.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
I'm with it.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay, I don't think it, okay, if it came up at a commission meeting, I apologize, but yes, I
Yeah, I
will.
don't think it, I didn't remember it either,
Yes,
but
it was, because I was the one who talked about it.
well, we'll take it. We'll take it. There you go. Commissioner Jones, you okay with that? Okay, very well. Let's move on a little bit and talk some more about these boats.
Jenkins Gymnasium, 80,000. I know that we've discussed that quite a few times. And last but not least, one thing that I want to note, you can go all the way to page 35, Sunny. So right here, I want to note that in the contingencies line, sorry, one up. Sunny.
Radio.
Yep, radios. So I separated out the radios from our operating cash reserve, which is the first line in your reserve. The cash reserve is unassigned fund balance. So should the radios not cost that much, that is based on the estimates that we've been given, the remainder could be moved back down into your reserves. Operating cash reserve is budgeted at 2.7. That is 25.94%. If the commission were to go with just what GAAP provides as best practice at 16%, that is 1.6 million.
No.
So slotted with option 2 and the proposed budgets from department heads in front of you, this is your balanced budget at this time.
Any questions, concerns?
So I just want to recap some of the things that I'm going to be producing back to the commission.
What do you have for better place transfer?
I'll just scroll up. 20,000. Some of these numbers I will say is your revenues as well. So based on what you do with personnel is a moving target, like I said, until you solidify what you would like to do personnel wise, that's
Mhm.
going to change some of these numbers. Not significantly, but it will change them.
But also look at the transfer to the airport fund. So we're still slated for that debt to come off in 23, correct?
24.
24? I thought it was 20.
23 is the debt. They have I'm sorry, my mind's gone blank. The general fund gave them a cash advance of 162,000 back in 2013, I believe. That has not been repaid. So they would have to repay that back. So FY 24 is when it would end.
Okay, in the golf course is coming off in 22,
3,
3,
23.
23.
first part.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, and so they've got some significant capital improvements that they'll be coming in to talk about later on. But I don't think it won't affect our budget. And so, any other questions on this budget? Seeing no more questions, we are set to adopt the budget on,
The first public hearing is September the 9th. Our next workshop is August 26th.
okay. All right, so we're moving forward with the numbers off of option 2 at this point, and you're gonna have discussions with finance about what your considerations are so that she can give us a tighter budget that's clear from where we are. Any other closing comment from the commission?
Are gonna do the budget.
You know, our numbers with $2 raise across the board. All right, anything else?
For the employees.
Also, I want to look at the breakdown off of executive salaries,
Okay.
what the increases are for every executive salary. Can we maybe get that in like an email or something? Because I think that may be critical for us to see what the impacts are for our directors compared to how that number affects us. So.
For every dollar, I think it's 2,080.
Aside from fire.
Yeah, and if you add like this, if you add the benefits in 40 more percent, you'd be around about 2,600 per dollar you give for every dollar. So we're looking at about 5,000 some dollars if we do a $2 raise across like that per person.
Minimum at least 550,000
Yep.
plus
Okay.
to
So
make a difference.
I think we've compressed our options down so that it gives us a bit more clarity as where we go. And so let's just kind of see where we are there and move forward. We appreciate everybody for your work on this. We will see you back in a couple of weeks so that we can kind of get closer to our final point. So if there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned and we're gonna move right into our CRA meeting. You can go ahead, you got time. We'll move right into our CRA meeting because I appreciate Ms. Kemp and Commissioner Rawls. I appreciate y'all being patient with us.
Not a problem.
I was talking to Ms. Kemp. I wasn't really worried about you.
Actually, I'm coming live to you from St. Augustine where I'm on vacation.
Oh, you get those?
Yeah, I actually started the meeting. I was driving from Palatka. I drove all the way from Palatka to St. Augustine.
Sounds like you were speeding, but that's just
No.
another thing. All right, so we're gonna Pastor Mulberry, I know we got you on here. We're gonna.
Yes, sir.
We've already had the invocation from the previous meeting, so we're gonna leave it there if you're okay with that covering being all right.
I'm fine, sir. Yes, sir.
And so we're gonna skip all the formalities for this meeting. We're gonna call this meeting to order. This is our City of Palatka CRA meeting for June 14th. Not June 14th, for August 9th, 2021. I know I'm getting old. We're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hill,
Here.
Commissioner Campbell,
President.
Commissioner Borum,
Present.
Commissioner Jones has stepped out of the room. Commissioner Jeff Rawls.
Present.
I don't see Representative Kemp. Representative Kemp, are you still on the line?
And Commissioner McCaskill is not present for the record.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Commissioner Jones is here. Go ahead. Just before you go, has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the June 14th meeting?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously. What we're gonna do at this time is we'll open the floor up for public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Please use the YouTube chat function or dial 386-329-0100 extension 0, or you can fill out a yellow speaker's card in the room. Is there anyone here for public comment?
Mayor Hill, this is Sunny. I didn't hear a motion or a second for the minutes from July 29. That was a motion for the minutes.
It was, yeah, I just assume we're approving both sets.
All right. Is there a motion for the July 29th minutes? There's a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any further unreadiness? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Public comment again, 386-329-0100 extension 0. YouTube chat function or yellow speaker's card in the back of the room. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Let's start out with the CRA under our regular business. Item number 1, Palatka CRA plan update. Mr. Jones,
Yes, sir.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Hill. Ladies and gentlemen of the Palatka CRA Commission and Board. What we're going to do tonight, shared my screen with you. I hope you can see the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Then I will go through this as quickly as possible. You have had a very long afternoon. What we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about the CRA plan update, the 4-point action plan, redevelopment agency goals, revenue projections, and then the next steps in the process. The outline of the CRA plan is what we're going to talk about next. First, there's a timeline of the CRA when it was established in '83. The historic district north and south were established in '84. The historic districts were added to the redevelopment area in '94. The previous CRA plan was completed in 2009. A 30-year extension occurred in 2012, and then the CRA plan update in 2020. Here's your CRA area. You see the central business district in the middle, and then you see the north and south historic districts, and then also the outline of the CRA document itself. The CRA plan is focused on a 4-point action plan. Those 4 points include continuing infrastructure improvements, establishing and reinforcing connections, activating opportunity sites, and encouraging private sector investment in the redevelopment area. The conceptual master plan shows the CRA area and the proposed locations of improvements in the area, including roundabouts, gateways, streetscaping, opportunity sites, roadway improvements, sidewalk improvements, decorative lighting and lighting improvements, picnic tables, splash pads, trailheads, and restrooms. This is a conceptual master plan to show the general location of the proposed programming improvements. The redevelopment agency goals address administration, housing, community and culture, infrastructure, public space and amenities, public health and safety, and the regulatory environment. So those are the items that are addressed specifically by the goals within the redevelopment plan. The TIF revenue projections are next. We've done TIF revenue projections for each one of the districts. And so you see those on the left-hand side of the screen, and then you see the combined revenues through 2042. And that comes out to about $19 million in combined revenues, cumulative revenues through 2042. The next steps in the approval process, we are in the home stretch right now. The next steps in the approval process. Step 1 is a review by the Historic Preservation Board on September 2nd and a review by the Planning Board on September 9th. And then we'll come back to you with the comments that we've received from those two boards and present the plan for consideration of adoption by the CRA Governing Board on October 11th. And that will be by resolution. And then adoption by the City Commission will occur by ordinance with the first reading on November 18th and the second reading on December 9th. Mayor Hill and ladies and gentlemen of the Commission and CRA Board, I would like to express my gratitude and thanks to the city staff for their support and direction during this process. Ms. Tucker, Mr. Griffith, and Ms. Kurtz have been very great with their guidance and direction. The CRA plan update could not have been accomplished without their efforts and heavy lifting, particularly in light of the ongoing COVID pandemic. So you have a great staff and you should be very, very proud of them. And that's the conclusion of the presentation. I am open for any questions that you have right now. We are in the adoption phase.
Do we have any question from the board? From the CRA plan update at this time? All right, so I guess we'll just pause for a minute. We got the mayor coming back in, but there's no questions at this time, and we'll hold for the mayor to let's move forward with the approval process of the CRA plan. So that's where we're at.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions as it relates to the plan? Okay. You've got the plan update as it's in place. I'll entertain a motion at this time to approve the update.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Campbell, a second by Commissioner Borum. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 2, approval of the CRA budget and to submit to City Commission for final adoption. Ms. Shank.
Sorry, 1 second. I do want to note for the record that there were some changes and I wanted to keep the CRA board up to date. Part of the budget process, what we do is we forecast out what we are anticipating to spend this fiscal year and then what needs to be carried over into next fiscal year. Once we posted the June and July ledgers, which is the expenses to the general ledger, this in turn reduced the amount of carry forward as well as reserve amount. So most notably, if we go to the last page, Sunny. Go up one more for me. One more. Yeah, keep going. Sorry. The budget. Here we go. Your reserves for downtown are slotted at 274,000, south at 61,000, and north at 26,000. So based on currently where we're at, what's been spent so far this year, what's carrying forward, and what projects we're looking at, those are your reserve amounts. That is the one change that was done from the last meeting to today.
Any questions? Okay. Any comments as it relates to the budget? Any additions?
No additions.
Okay. If there are none, I entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, the second by Commissioner Rawls.
We got Windstream.
Yeah, he's on Windstream.
I'm on Camp Stream.
We need to have a conversation about rural broadband. So there's a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That was the quickest budget work we've done. Guess I made up for all the rest. Next up, SBDC third quarter report. Welcome. Mash the mic, the blue button on.
Good afternoon, everybody. Rick Paul from the SBDC. How's everybody today?
We're great. Good to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. So things are going very good, and I'll be fairly brief because I know you guys have been sitting in here for quite a while. I am trying to accomplish lots of things, but one of the main things is trying to get in touch with each of you just to introduce myself personally and to try to get some feedback about what you think, for small business in this area. I've got topics coming up in a minute about education. So what sort of topics you might like to see in Palatka. So it could be import, export, it could be QuickBooks, it could be lots of different things. Right now, I've been really busy with clients. So we have 4 different areas that we consult in. Pre-venture, so I currently have about 3 or 4 clients in Palatka that are in the pre-venture stage, and actually a couple from outside of the city limits. So this is a time when a small business person can get some feedback about a business type or an industry or a location or a business model, something along those lines. So that's going pretty good for the pre-venture. The next stage that a client moves into would be the startup stage. And I have several clients in the startup stage right now in Putnam County. So this is about getting business licenses. It's about legal structures, commercial bank accounts, things along those lines. So those are going very well. The biggest chunk of the clients at the moment are existing businesses in town. So some of these businesses have been here for 30 or 40 years or longer and need a little help in certain areas. So if I don't have the expertise, I recommend one of my SBDC fellow counselors because we're a team and we all work together to help them out. And then the final stage would be business exits. Hopefully, it'd be a voluntary business exit, not not one that is causing them to go out of business. But I don't have any clients in that particular area right now. So some of the counseling areas right now are marketing. So this is new business startups, existing businesses, trying to find out if their products or services are good for this particular area. Competitor analysis to try to figure out why a certain business's sales seem to be falling faster than everybody else's. So lots of things that could be behind that, but until I look at the competitor sales, it's hard for me to know if it's a structural problem with that particular business or if the whole industry is kind of going down. I've got 4 or 5 clients right now working on business plans for loan applications. And I have a couple clients interested in the government procurement. So that might be city, it might be county, it could be with the college, and maybe some of it would be state. So we've got a whole procurement area for the SBDC. Other plans in the work at the moment, I plan on offering quarterly educational seminars. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, maybe QuickBooks, could be import, export, could be marketing, could be social media, whatever the topics are. And that's one of the reasons why I'd like to meet with you all individually if there's an opportunity to get some feedback about what you see that could be needed. And then something that I did in Tallahassee that worked very well are entrepreneur or small business socials. So this would probably be monthly. where we just announce, come to XYZ place and hang out for an hour and tell us about your business and meet other people who are small business people and try to network. Basically, it's a networking event. So those are the items that I've been working on since I've been here, plus an office, plus a phone and a few other minor details. But anyhow, been going pretty good, and I think you have the full report in front of you. But I do see a good need in Putnam County for the SPDC, and I'm working to fulfill that need. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
I got a comment though. I think what you're doing is, I don't know if this is a little bit different than what we had before, where you're going to be doing the quarterly meetings here with businesses and as well as you're going to have some special things monthly or what have you. So I think that'll be really good for the community to be able to come out and meet. And we also have our chamber that also does something similar periodically. So I think with all of those different things, trying to help meet our community needs, I think it'll be a really good thing.
Thank you very much. The chamber and I will be working, or the SPDC will be working very closely together.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I have a comment as well. The services that you offer, they're great. And I've spoken to people who talked about, coming to start a business in Palatka and some of the challenges that they have faced once they, people go online and read about our educational system, economic, and when you start talking about economic development, and sometimes they're deterred. However, this is enlightening to see that you're going to be here starting some of this stuff. We would like to also welcome you to partner with us with our newly acquired Northside Neighborhood Investment Center, or Jenkins Middle School. I don't think we officially have a name for it just yet, officially, but to bring in your small business socials, career skills, and soft skills is a biggie. I was in the recruitment field, and that was an element that was missing when you start talking about customer service and stuff like that. So definitely would like to see that along with the business plan. And what do you feel about home-based businesses?
Well, I really like them. They fill a very good need in our society for people to run businesses, and most of them are home-based offices. Right. Of course, they'd have to check with the zoning to ensure that wherever they are is zoned appropriately. But they fill a really good need because somebody can replace income that they would have gotten, say, by commuting up to Jacksonville every day and coming back, or over to St. Augustine or something. And then eventually, most of those become pretty successful, so that they're going to have to hire somebody. And that's the overall goal, is to make the business a little bit more successful so that they can hire somebody, and then eventually somebody else. So it's the old saying, a rising tide floats all boats.
Right. And I guess my question would be helping them transition from being home-based to going to a brick and mortar and doing exactly what you just said.
Sure,
So,
sure. Love to help them out.
Appreciate you. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Revitalize. Ms. Correa.
Good afternoon, good evening, whatever it may be now. Robbie Correa, 118 Dodge
Good
Street,
evening.
and I'm here about Revitalize Historic Palatka. We did submit a report. I'm sure you've all received it. I tried to keep it very brief. And of course, with the pandemic this year, like everybody else, we've kind of kept a low profile in terms of events for everybody's safety, and we're going to continue to do that the way things are now playing out. We still anticipate having the tandem cyclists come as part of the Trail Town piece, but they may cancel too. We just don't know yet, but we're planning for them to be here in October. We're probably going to do another quarterly meeting like we did for answering the strategic plan questions, and bring in the chamber and downtown merchants, and maybe have, say, Mr. Paul or Sam from the chamber speak, so that we have a presentation every quarter for everybody again, if it's safe to do so. Those are all the things. In spite of all of that, as you saw in our report, a number of small businesses have opened in the last year, and several more are slated to open in the fall. So we'll be having a series of ribbon cuttings. We just had one last week, and Mayor Hill and Commissioner Borum were there. And the people were three. Yeah, we had three at that particular occasion. And we tend to try to do around three, no more than four, because it gets to be a little much. But I think those business owners were pretty pleased to have that happen. And we will continue to do those the first Tuesday of every month. We'll continue our cleanups because those are fairly safe with Keep Putnam Beautiful. But those are the things we're going to do. But this is the list of upcoming ribbon cuttings. The ones we just did are on there, but there is a long and lengthy list. So we'll be busy for a while. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I just want to personally thank you for the work that you've done along with Revitalize with the grand opening. And we definitely appreciate all of that. And so I think Ms. Correa is deserving of a round of applause for the work that she does tirelessly in this community. I know a lot of times that work goes without thank you, but you do it. Yeah, it works out perfectly. You're gonna get free groceries after this in about it, and then a little bit. So we appreciate you coming in, starting your new business up, and just really believing in Palatka. And so thank you again for all your hard work. If there's nothing else at this time, we're gonna go to our closing comments. Commissioner Ross, 14 seconds.
I'm sorry, I had to find the unmute button. It's kind of tough when you're sitting by a pool on a Zoom meeting. I really have nothing. I was able to meet with the SBDC a couple of weeks ago, and I would like to say that I hope that that the city and the county can start working on some of these projects together. I heard, I'll be honest with you, listening to your budget presentation, I was very jealous. I wish we could do that at the county level, but for some reason we don't. I really don't have anything else. Just hope that we can see some cooperation between the city and the county real soon, because there are some projects, especially regarding this year, I think we can work on together.
Mayor, I will mention for Commissioner Rawls.
Your mic's on.
We have a meeting scheduled, myself and Jonathan and Mr. Suggs, and I think Public Works Director from the county, to begin some conversations along the lines of what you and others have instructed. And I think it's already set for the 16th. I forget the date, but we are going to attempt to try to bridge that communication gap, as you and other commissioners have asked me to try to do.
Okay, appreciate that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Ross.
No, I said that's excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My comment is directed to Commissioner Rawls. I'm a little jealous of you right now because you're around the pool and I'm here, but that's it.
I'm at a different kind of board meeting. It's a diving board meeting. I just got to the pool a few minutes ago.
Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Bourne.
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no comments, I'm gonna follow suit. We're gonna go ahead and stand adjourned.